This is not a game. You understand the stakes here.
Like and subscribe right now if you love hidden stories from Hollywood's golden age. What you're about to hear is a true story that powerful people tried to erase forever. A man made one mistake that changed his entire life. Stay tuned. ***. Las Vegas, November 1958. The night air was electric with possibility. The Sands Hotel was the most famous place in the world. Every night, thousands of people came through its doors hoping to win big, have fun, and maybe catch a glimpse of their favorite stars. But tonight was different. Inside the main showroom, two legends were about to perform together. Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin, the two most popular entertainers in America. The two men who could fill any room, command any stage, make any audience laugh or cry with just a look. Then someone did something nobody expected. Someone insulted Frank Sinatra. Right there. In front of everyone. In front of Dean Martin. In front of thousands of witnesses. What happened next was so shocking, so controversial, and so powerful that the hotel executives made it disappear. They erased it from the records. They told people to forget what they saw. But some people never forgot. And now, for the first time, the full story can finally be told. To understand this story, you need to know who Frank Sinatra really was. Frank wasn't just a singer. He was a force of nature. At 53 years old in 1958, he had already lived multiple lifetimes. He had been a poor kid in Hoboken, New Jersey. His father was a boxer and a fireman. His mother was tough as nails. Frank grew up understanding one thing. You had to fight for everything you wanted in this world. His voice was like nothing else. It didn't just sing words, it told stories. It made people feel things they didn't know they could feel. When Frank sang, women cried. Men felt their hearts break. Children were mesmerized. His voice had made him one of the richest men in America. He had won Oscars. He had dated the most beautiful women in Hollywood. He was married to Ava Gardner, one of the most gorgeous actresses alive. But Frank was also known for something else. He didn't tolerate disrespect. Not from anyone. He had a temper that could be absolutely terrifying. People who knew him understood that crossing Frank Sinatra could be the worst decision of your life. Dean Martin was different. At 43 years old, Dean was younger but equally talented. Where Frank was intense and demanding, Dean was cool and smooth. He could sing beautifully. He could act in movies. He could make people laugh without even trying. Dean had this natural charm that made everyone like him instantly. Frank and Dean had performed together many times. They had great chemistry on stage. They could make each other laugh. They could finish each other's sentences. Together, they were unstoppable. When you put them on the same stage, magic happened. The Sands Hotel itself was the crown jewel of Las Vegas. Built just a few years earlier, it had become the place where entertainment history was written every single night. The showroom was massive, holding over 1,000 people. The shows were spectacular. The food was incredible. The drinks were flowing. It was the most glamorous place in America. Now, there was a man named Vincent Russo. Vincent was a businessman in Las Vegas. Not the kind of legitimate businessman who built things, the other kind. Vincent was connected to people who made things happen in the city. He had money. He had power. But he didn't have what Frank Sinatra had. He didn't have real power. Vincent was 50 years old, still handsome, but getting bitter. He watched Frank Sinatra command respect from everyone around him. He watched people scramble to please Frank. He watched Frank get anything he wanted, whenever he wanted it. And Vincent resented it. Deeply. Vincent told himself that Frank wasn't special. Frank was just lucky. Frank got a few good breaks and rode them to success. Vincent believed that if he had Frank's opportunities, he could do the same thing. This feeling ate at Vincent day and night. That particular November evening, Vincent decided to go to the Sands. He was feeling confident. He'd had a few drinks at another casino. He'd won some money at the tables. He was feeling like he could do anything. He heard that Frank and Dean were performing that night, and he decided to go see them. What he didn't know was that he was about to make the biggest mistake of his life. The showroom was packed that night. Every seat was taken. People stood in the back. The energy was incredible. The audience was excited. They had come to see the greatest entertainers in the world. Frank took the stage first. He walked out slowly, and the entire room erupted in applause. It wasn't just applause, it was adoration. People stood up. People cheered. Some people had tears in their eyes just seeing him. Frank smiled and waved, then stepped up to the microphone. He sang one of his most famous songs. His voice was perfect. Every note was exactly right. It was like watching a master craftsman at work. The audience was completely silent, completely focused on every word, every note. Then Dean came out, and the energy shifted. Now it was fun. Now it was laughter and entertainment. Dean told jokes. He made faces. He and Frank sang together and made each other laugh on stage. It was brilliant entertainment. But somewhere in the middle of Dean's comedy routine, Vincent Russo stood up. He had been drinking. He had been getting angrier and angrier as he sat there. He was angry at Frank. He was angry at Dean. He was angry at himself. And the anger finally boiled over. "This is all fake," Vincent shouted. His voice cut through Dean's joke like a knife. "You're not funny. Frank Sinatra is washed up. He's nothing but has been singing old songs." The entire showroom went silent immediately. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. It was like someone had hit the pause button on the entire world. Security guards looked to each other. The hotel manager, who was watching from the side of the stage, went pale. Other audience members turned to stare at Vincent. Some of them knew who he was. Some of them knew that he had just made a terrible, terrible mistake. But Vincent didn't care. He was standing now, getting more aggressive. "Frank Sinatra," Vincent shouted again. "You think you're the king of this city? You think everybody has to bow down to you? Well, I'm telling you right now, you're nothing. You're just a guy who got lucky." That's when Frank stopped singing. He had been in the middle of another song, but he stopped cold. He looked directly at Vincent with eyes that were absolutely ice cold. Frank's expression didn't change much. He didn't yell, he didn't scream. But the look on his face was more terrifying than any anger could have been. Frank set down his microphone slowly. Deliberately, he stepped to the side of the stage. He looked at Vincent for a long moment, studying him, as if trying to understand how a human being could be so stupid. Dean moved closer to Frank. Dean didn't say anything, but his presence changed everything. Now it wasn't just Frank and Vincent. Now it was Frank and Dean against Vincent. Two legends standing together. Frank finally spoke. His voice was quiet, but every single person in that room could hear every word clearly. "Do you understand what you just did?" Frank asked. His voice wasn't loud, but it was filled with controlled fury. "Do you understand who you're talking to?" Vincent tried to respond, but Frank cut him off. "I don't care what you have to say," Frank said. "I don't care what you think you know. I don't care what you believe about yourself or about me. What matters right now is that you have made the biggest mistake of your life." Security guards were moving now, moving toward Vincent, but Frank raised his hand. He wasn't done yet. "You came into my place," Frank said. "You came into a place where I perform, where I entertain people, where I am treated with respect. And you decided to disrespect me. You decided to yell at me. You decided to embarrass yourself in front of over 1,000 people." Frank stepped closer to the edge of the stage. His eyes were locked on Vincent. "Let me tell you something about this city," Frank continued. "I own this city. Not literally. I'm not that delusional, but every single person of importance, every single person with any real power, every single person who matters in Las Vegas answers to me. Or at least, they listen to me. They respect me. They know that crossing Frank Sinatra is a bad idea." Vincent's face was going pale now. He was starting to understand what he had done. "I could have you beaten up," Frank said. "I could have you removed from this city. I could make sure you never work in Las Vegas again. I could make sure no bank gives you a loan. I could make sure your business fails. I have that power, and I'm telling you that right now." He paused for effect. "But I'm not going to do any of that," Frank said. "You know why? Because I want you to walk out of here tonight. I want you to go home and think about what you did. I want you to lie in bed tonight and understand what could have happened. I want you to spend the rest of your life knowing that Frank Sinatra could have destroyed you, but he decided to show mercy instead." Vincent was shaking now. His face was white. His friends had disappeared. They didn't want to be associated with him anymore. "Security," Frank said, not even looking at them. "Get this man out of my sight." Security guards moved quickly and firmly. They escorted Vincent out of the showroom. People watched him go, some of them shaking their heads in disbelief at what he had done. The entire incident had lasted maybe 7 minutes. But those 7 minutes had changed everything. Everyone in that showroom understood that they had just witnessed something extraordinary. They had seen raw power. They had seen what happens when someone disrespects the wrong person. Once Vincent was gone and the doors to the showroom were closed, the room was completely silent. Frank stood there for a moment, letting the reality of what had just happened settle in. Then Frank smiled. It wasn't an angry smile. It wasn't a cruel smile. It was the smile of a man who had just handled a situation with absolute perfection. It was the smile of someone who was completely in control. "You know what?" Frank said to Dean. "That was a nice little interruption. But I think we were having a good time before that guy decided to ruin it. So let's get back to it. What do you say, Dino?" Dean laughed. It was a warm, genuine laugh. "I say let's show these people what real entertainment looks like," Dean said. The audience erupted in applause and cheers. They weren't cheering for Frank's anger or his threats. They were cheering for the way he had handled the situation. He hadn't lost his composure. He hadn't let the situation spiral into violence. He had simply demonstrated absolute control. Frank and Dean went back to performing, and the rest of the show was incredible. Their energy was even better than before. It was like Frank had taken the anger and the intensity from the confrontation and poured it all into his performance. He sang with more passion than he had all night. Dean's jokes got bigger laughs. Together, they were absolutely brilliant. By the end of the show, the audience was on their feet. It was a standing ovation that lasted for several minutes. People were cheering, clapping, shouting. It was one of the greatest performances in Las Vegas history. But what happened after the show was even more important. The hotel manager called Frank and Dean to his office. He was nervous. He was worried about what had happened. He was worried about what would happen next. "Frank," the manager said carefully, "we need to talk about what happened tonight." "Nothing happened tonight," Frank said calmly. "There was a drunk man who got rowdy. Security removed him. That's all." "But everyone saw it," the manager said. "Everyone knows what happened." "Listen to me," Frank said, his voice becoming very serious. "That man's name was Vincent Russo. I want him banned from every casino and nightclub on the Strip. I want him banned from the Sands permanently. I want him banned from every establishment owned by my associates. I want him to understand that he can't do business in this city anymore." Dean nodded in agreement. "And I don't want anyone talking about this," Frank continued. "Not to the newspapers. Not to the television stations. Not to anyone. This is a private matter. It's over. It's done. It never happened." The manager understood. He knew that Frank had the power to make this happen. He knew that every casino owner in Las Vegas would do exactly what Frank said. "It will be done," the manager said. And that's exactly what happened. Within days, Vincent Russo found that he couldn't do business anywhere in Las Vegas. Casinos refused to let him gamble. Restaurants wouldn't serve him. Business associates suddenly wanted nothing to do with him. His credit dried up. His connections disappeared. The network of power that existed in Las Vegas had simply decided that Vincent Russo didn't belong there anymore. Within a month, Vincent had left Las Vegas. He moved to California and lived a quiet life, always aware of what he had lost when he decided to disrespect Frank Sinatra. As for the incident itself, it was erased from history. There were no newspaper articles about it. There were no television reports. The hotel didn't mention it in any official records. It was as if it had never happened. But everyone who was in that showroom that night remembered exactly what they saw. They remembered every word Frank said. They remembered the look in his eyes. They remembered the way Dean stood beside him. They remembered the moment when power was demonstrated in its purest form. For decades, the story was kept quiet. People who had been in that showroom would only talk about it in whispers. They would tell the story to their closest friends, swearing them to secrecy. The story spread slowly through Las Vegas, through the entertainment industry, through the network of people who understood the real power structures of the time. But the real lesson of this story wasn't about fear or intimidation. It was about something much more important. True power isn't about how loud you can yell or how many people you can intimidate. True power is about control. True power is about influence. True power is about the ability to affect the world around you simply through your reputation and your connections. Frank Sinatra had the ability to destroy Vincent Russo. He had connections to people who could have seriously hurt him. But Frank didn't choose that path. Instead, he chose something more sophisticated and more devastating. He chose to exercise his influence and his power in a way that would completely shut Vincent out of the life he had built. That was true power. Dean Martin understood this too. That's why he stood with Frank. Dean wasn't standing there ready for violence. Dean was standing there as a show of solidarity, as a demonstration that two of the most powerful men in entertainment were united. That alone was enough to tell Vincent that he had made a mistake. The fact that the incident was erased from official records was also significant. It showed the level of power Frank Sinatra really had. He could make something disappear. He could control what people knew and what they didn't know. He could determine what became part of history and what was forgotten. This kind of power is rare. Not many people have it, but those who do understand how to use it carefully. Years later, when people who had been there would try to talk about the incident, Frank would simply smile and say, "I don't know what you're talking about. That never happened." But everyone understood that Frank was lying. They understood that he was being coy. They understood that this was Frank's way of acknowledging that the incident had happened, but that he was choosing not to discuss it. Dean Martin handled it the same way. When asked about it, Dean would just laugh and say, "Frank handled that perfectly. That's all I have to say about it." But the lesson remained crystal clear. Frank Sinatra was the most powerful man in Las Vegas. Not because he was the strongest or the toughest, but because he had influence, respect, and connections. Because he had demonstrated that he could affect people's lives in significant ways. Because he had shown that crossing him had real consequences. Vincent Russo learned this lesson too late. He spent the rest of his life understanding what he had lost when he decided to disrespect Frank Sinatra. He never had the same kind of success again. He never had the same kind of respect or power. He never recovered from that one night. The story of what happened that night became a legend in certain circles. It was the story told to young people who wanted to understand how power really worked. It was the story used to explain why certain people could never work in Las Vegas again. It was the story that showed what happened when you crossed Frank Sinatra. And the fact that it was deliberately hidden, deliberately erased from history, only made the story more powerful. Because what is hidden becomes more interesting. What is forgotten becomes more memorable. What powerful people try to suppress becomes what people most want to know about. In the end, the story of that night at the Sands Hotel teaches us several important things. First, it teaches us that respect is something that has to be earned. You can't just demand respect from people. You have to earn it through your actions, through your abilities, through the way you treat people. Second, it teaches us that true power is more sophisticated than violence or intimidation. True power is about influence, about being able to affect the world around you without necessarily lifting a finger. True power is about having so much credibility and so many connections that people listen to you. Third, it teaches us that consequences are real. Vincent Russo thought he could disrespect Frank Sinatra without any real consequences. He was wrong. Disrespecting the wrong person can change your entire life. It can close doors that you didn't even know were open. And finally, it teaches us that sometimes the most powerful moment is the one that nobody talks about. Sometimes the truth is more powerful than any official record. Sometimes the stories that are hidden away become the most legendary stories of all. Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin understood all of this. That's why they were legends. That's why people still talk about them decades after they died. That's why stories about them, true stories and maybe some exaggerated ones, continue to fascinate us. The night Vincent Russo insulted Frank Sinatra was the night that history tried to bury. But the truth survived. And now you know what really happened. Call to action. If this incredible hidden story from the golden age of Hollywood fascinated you, then like and subscribe right now. Don't miss more untold stories about the real power players of entertainment history. Share this video with your friends who love old Hollywood and Las Vegas stories. Leave a comment below and tell us, what would you have done if you were in that showroom that night? Have you ever witnessed a moment where someone learned the hard way about disrespecting the wrong person? We want to hear your stories. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our next incredible video. And if you have any other stories about Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, or the golden age of Las Vegas, drop them in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. ****.